barrels, beds, beehives, boats, and bookshelves, and a bunch of other items in Minecraft like cartography tables, crafting tables, chiseled bookshelves, and chests. All have this one thing in common. They all require wood planks in their crafting recipe. Wood is a huge part of Minecraft, and today on the Bedrock Guide, I'm going to get an infinite source of it in the form of bamboo. I normally wait till the end of the video to say this kind of thing, but hey, if you're enjoying this video so far that literally just started, make sure to like, subscribe, leave me a comment. It only takes a couple seconds of your time and it helps out the channel tremendously. I'd appreciate it. I spent a bunch of time terraforming and prepping the land for this building, which originally was going to go right here, but I pushed it back a little bit because I feel like it's going to flow better with what I've got planned for paths. But without really wasting any more time, we're going to get right into the tutorial for this bamboo farm that outputs 50,000 bamboo per hour. It's actually kind of crazy how fast this is for how small it is. And we're going to start by placing chests all the way across this wood right here. It is 4 double chests, and out of the back of each of these chests, we're going to put 2 hoppers going 3 deep. And you should end up with something that looks a little bit like this. And then on the back 2 rows of hoppers, I'm going to place mud all the way across. This is absolutely vital for this farm. It has to be mud and it has to be too wide. Otherwise, you're going to run the risk of bamboo getting stuck. Then across the back of the mud, I'm going to place another row of blocks, and then on top of these blocks, I'm going to place a row of front-facing dispensers. Just make sure that they are dispensers and not droppers. And the way that you can tell is, 1, they say dispenser. They also say it right here. Or if you just want to look at it at first glance, it's the guy that looks surprised. And then on top of these dispensers, we're going to place a row of pistons. And then out of the back of the dispensers, make sure you're going into the dispensers and not the pistons. We're going to place another row of hoppers, followed by another row of double chests, and this is where we're going to feed bone meal into the farm. Next, I'm going to come over to the left-hand side of the farm, and we're going to line up with this hopper right on the end, and then pillar up right next to it until we have one block that is higher than the hopper on the left. And then on top of this block, I'm going to place a lever, and then on this middle block right here, I'm going to pillar out this direction, and then right next to this block with the lever, I'm going to have a redstone repeater facing that direction. We'll leave it alone. We're not going to change the tick rate. And then one more block right here, followed by a redstone torch connected to this block facing that direction. When I flip this lever, it's going to turn this repeater on, which is going to power this block, and then depower that redstone torch. And this is going to be the default state for the farm. I'm going to pause right here on the circuitry for just a minute because spacing is incredibly important for this farm. And I'll explain why when we go through and talk about how this works. But for now, I'm going to go directly underneath this hopper line, and I'm going to place blocks all the way across, and then I'm going to place a temporary block right here, and then another block right here, and we'll carry this all the way across as well. I'm going to change the direction of that block because it's going to drive me nuts. Absolutely has no effect on the farm, but it has an effect on my brain. So from here, I'm going to take some more repeaters, and I'm going to face them directly into the blocks underneath these hoppers, and I will leave them all set to the default 1 tick, and then with another row of blocks directly behind these repeaters, I'm going to place redstone dust so that they all connect into the repeaters as well. From here, I'm going to go all the way to the right-hand side, and we're going to go out 1 block and no more on the back side of this circuit. It's absolutely not necessary. And here, I'm going to have a repeater facing this direction, still set to 1 tick, and diagonally to this repeater, I'm going to pillar up 3 blocks, and out of the side of this block right here, I'm going to place 1 redstone torch, which will light up that entire row. And then from here, I'm going to follow this back to meet up with this circuitry right here. So I will go 1 block here, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right here I'm gonna go 1 and 2. This is where I connect up the lever to the rest of this circuitry with a comparator. With this comparator, I'm going to put some redstone right here, here, and here, which is going to create a comparator clock. But the only way that this works is if you set it to the compare state, so that little red light bulb needs to be on, and then if we flip this lever, you're gonna be able to see that that starts ticking really fast. I'll explain how all of this works together again here in a bit at the walkthrough. Then all you need to do is place redstone dust here and connect it all the way up to the top of this block. And then one last thing that we need to do in order for this thing to work correctly is line up with these dispensers right here and dig underneath so we can get to everything. And then these blocks that we place directly under the dispensers, I failed to mention earlier, are temporary. So I'm gonna break them, and now you can see the dispenser right there. And from here, I'm gonna place a redstone torch on every single block so that each redstone torch is facing directly into the bottom of each dispenser. And that's pretty much it for the redstone circuitry on this first part. There is a little bit more, but just hold on. We'll get there in just a sec. This is the simplest and most basic form of this farm. Actually, not really. You can do this with just one dispenser and one piston. So that would technically be the most simplest form of this farm, but it's not going to be quite as fast as what we're doing here. So here's how this thing works. I'm going to plant some bamboo directly on this mud in front of every dispenser. And then I'm going to go into the back chest behind the farm and preload some bone meal. And that's it. All we got to do is flip this lever and magically these dispensers are going to tick on and off and fire out bone meal at this bamboo. And bada bing, bada boom, 50,000 bamboo per hour. Absolutely nuts. Are you ready? Here we go. Watch it go. Oh, it's flying everywhere. That's not what we want. Don't worry. There is a fix for that, but I wanted you to see it. It's so beautiful. Are we already out of bone meal? Holy smokes, that was fast. It goes quick. At any rate, I'm going to pick all of this up. And we started with 1 stack -8 that we put in here. And now we've got a bunch more. And that was like 15 seconds time. That was crazy fast. I ended with nearly 5 times the amount of bone meal I had before I started in 15 seconds. Yeah, you're going to want to build this. However, there is one catch. What happens when this thing is off? It would be kind of a silly waste of space if this farm only worked in the active mode. So we're going to put a passive switch in that allows this farm to work when you are just out and about in the area. So basically, anytime a piece of bamboo grows, it's gonna harvest it. Kind of. It is a fairly simple addition to get this into passive mode, and we're going to start on this same side right here. Perfect. This bamboo has already grown, and so I'm going to take one of my observers, and I'm going to face it directly into this piece of bamboo right here. And then I'm going to take a solid block and place it right here, and then out of this block, I'm going to go out 2 with glass and bring it back 3 on each side. So you've got a 2 by 3 space, and then coming out of this observer, I'm going to put 1 repeater right here, and then 1 repeater facing into that repeater at 4 ticks. This is the only repeater in the entire farm that changes the tick state, so make sure you get this one right. It is important for how this works. And then on the rest of these glass pieces, I'm gonna put redstone dust. Putting a pause on that circuitry for just a second, I'm gonna go over to the end of the row on these pistons, and I'll place a solid block on top of each of them, and I'll bring it out 1 farther, and then place a block right here, and then a block right here, and a block right here, followed by a line of redstone all the way down to the end of the row of pistons. And then I'm going to come down here to ground level, and out of the side of this piece of glass lined up with that redstone line up there, I'm going to put 1 more solid block, followed by another solid block directly under the piece of glass, and then out of the side of this block, a redstone torch, and then coming up on top of the farm again for a second, on this block that we extended right here, 1 piece of redstone dust, and then another observer facing directly down into that redstone dust, and then 1 piece of redstone dust on that observer. And last but not least, going directly under the farm again, we're going to place 1 block coming out of this block right here, diagonally to the one with the redstone torch, followed by a repeater directly on top of it. And you heard it, did exactly what it was supposed to do. Perfect. So maybe it is time that we talk about how this thing works, because it is entirely finished. If you've made it this far, congratulations. Give yourself a pat on the back. This is not really an easy farm to build. It's not necessarily super hard either. It's a little bit more moderate, so if you're new to redstone, don't be intimidated. We're going to talk you through how all of this works together, so maybe you can design something like this in the future. This farm has 2 states, active and passive. When it is off, it is in the passive state. Now, technically, this is active right now because this is powered, but I've inverted the signal, and I'll explain what that means here in a moment. But just for the sake of understanding how the farm is behaving, we'll call this passive mode. When we flip this lever, this block will become depowered, which will depower this redstone repeater, which will depower this block, which will then split the signal into 2 different directions, one of which goes toward the growth detector, and the other which goes to the power for the dispensers. Right now, this block is powered, but when we flip that lever, it will flip the signal, depower this block, which will allow this torch to come back on and provide power to this comparator. It will rapidly tick on and off, and send that ticking signal over here to where it will tick the power to this block on and off, which will rapidly change the state of this torch and rapidly change the state of this repeater. It will also rapidly tick on on and off all of these redstone pieces and these redstone repeaters, which will rapidly tick the power to these blocks. And then you remember we placed torches on the other side of the block, so these torches will rapidly tick on and off as well, which finally we get to the dispensers. All of these dispensers will rapidly tick on and off, dispensing all of that beautiful bone meal into the bamboo and causing it to grow. By proximity, these pistons will also receive the redstone signal from the dispenser and force the piston open and close in a rapid fashion as well, which will break the second highest piece of bamboo and drop it down onto the mud. Sometimes it'll land here, sometimes it'll land there. In my testing, I have found that the most lossless form of this farm requires this second row of mud. Even though this mud looks like it's a full block tall, it behaves as if it is not. You can see my feet are kind of sunk down into the mud a little bit, right? Well, when the bamboo falls on it, it also sinks down into the mud. And because it doesn't act like a regular full block, these hoppers are allowed to pull the items through and then down into our storage. I have lined these hoppers up like this because also in my testing, I found that this farm is way too fast for them to funnel into one hopper line into a single double chest. Telling you, it's crazy, crazy fast. We talked about the active state. Now let's talk about the passive state. This one is much simpler. As you can see, there's been bamboo growing right here, and bamboo can grow on any one of these spaces, and it will not do anything unless it grows right here. If this piece of bamboo grows, this observer is going to detect that change of state, and it's going to rapid fire a single tick to this repeater right here. When it fires that signal out, it's going to do a couple of things. First off, it's going to send a redstone signal here, which will be picked up by this observer and then sent all the way down the line to extend all of these pistons forward and break any bamboo that has grown. It doesn't matter if all of them have grown, it only matters if this one has grown. So sometimes you might get one, sometimes you might get 3 or 4. It just depends on the randomness of the growth. The other thing that this signal does is it passes the redstone signal around to this repeater, and when you feed a repeater into another repeater, it actually locks the state of that repeater temporarily, which is vitally important for this kind of observer detection, because if you were just to leave this observer right here without a locking repeater, once this piston fires, it's going to go forward and send out a redstone signal, and then backward and send out a redstone signal, and it will just loop over and over and over again, forcing your farm into an active state, even though you didn't tell it to. This locking repeater circuit will prevent that from happening, so make sure it is set up exactly like this. And then one more important thing to note, when the farm goes into the active state, the way that I've set this up, this detection system will get locked off as well. The reason I set it up this way is because if you leave this detection system on while the active state is going and these pistons are firing rapidly forward and back, it's going to try to send signals through this circuit as well, which will also try to power these pistons and force the pistons to go forward and back as well, which is going to compete with this signal down here and cause it to slow down and do some weird stuff. So the way that I've locked this circuit during the active state is with this little circuit right here. When we turn the farm on, this repeater will turn off, this redstone torch will turn on, and because this redstone torch will always be on while the farm is running, this redstone dust will never change state, which will never trigger this observer, which will never trigger the pistons from the top. When I place a piece of bamboo right here to simulate growth, it's gonna break all of that. And as you've seen before, when I flip this lever, it's also gonna send it into the active state, and you can see that none of the pistons are firing off of this redstone signal. Nothing is happening from the observer here. It's all deactivated for the moment. And then one really cool thing that this does as well, when we shut this off, this observer clock will kick in and fire the pistons one more time, which will ensure that no bamboo is grown on any of these spaces. That is very important as well, because in some of my early designs of this farm, it would leave a bamboo grown here, which would then kind of defeat the purpose of this observer because it would never detect a change of state after that. So, whew, that's a lot. And because I know this has been a lot, I'm going to go ahead and capture some screenshots of this exact farm built in my test world, and I'm going to upload them for you to my Discord server so that you can check them out at every angle, and hopefully that will make it a little bit easier for you to build. And I think I'm going want to take it one step farther as well. I normally don't do this kind of thing, but as a special thank you to everyone who is a YouTube member or a Patreon subscriber, I'm going to go ahead and upload a structure file of this as well to the Discord that's only accessible in the YouTube members and Patreon channels. That way, if you want, you can just import it into your own world and tinker with it and see how it works. So either way, if you're a subscriber or a YouTube member or a Patreon subscriber, thank you so much for all of your support. Just watching these videos means the world to me. And before you call it a day, make sure that the entire farm is enclosed. I like to put some glass across the front and maybe the side, but I like to be able to see into the farm just to make sure everything is working. And it's kind of fun just to watch all the bamboo drop. That's pretty much it for the farm. Let's get a building around it. Well, how is that for a fly through? BluJay's getting fancy with the camera work. I do want to go back and show you a few of my favorite spots in this build, but before we do, let's check out the farm. Oh, and this has been a few days between my last clip and now, and as you might tell, my voice is a little hoarse. I got that classic January, February cold going on. Hopefully we'll be back to full health here soon. Let's start by shutting this off. It is a little bit noisy when we're standing in here, but check it out. This is only a couple of minutes worth of the farm going, and we're almost at 2 full rows in all 4 double chests. In other words, if we combine all of these, we've got 1 full double chest of bamboo plus a little extra in just a few minutes of running the farm. Now, I'm gonna go over here where I've got a back door into the redstone side of this build, and you can see we've also used quite a bit of bone meal. Not to worry, I've still got plenty right here, and here at the skeleton farm, and of course an unlimited supply here at the fish farm as well. Basically, I'm not gonna run out for a while. A couple more quick things to show you aside from the redstone in the back of the farm. Off to the side, I have a little storage shed for every type of log. And I know this is not technically what this building is for. The building is for the bamboo farm, but technically that is now in the wood family. And so I thought it would be a good idea to not only store bamboo here, but to make a new place for our wood storage as well. I'm kind of running out of storage in that storage basement anyway, so that'll open things up once we move all the wood stuff over here. And this might be my favorite part of the whole build, this giant saw hanging out the side of the lumber mill, chopping up this giant oak log. Overall, really happy with this build, and I hope you are too. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you do all the normal stuff, like, subscribe, comment, all the things. And hey, don't go anywhere. There's more Bedrock Guide content on the way.